Let's take a look at how to find the inverse of log and exponential. So if I give you f of x equals 4 log base 7 of x minus 2. We're going to start off the same way that we do with all of the other finding inverses. I'm going to switch x and y. So remember, f of x is really a y. So I have x equals 4 log base 7 of y minus 2. Okay? So I want to get the log by itself, and I'm going to get the log by itself by doing with the order of operations backwards. So this is the part that I want alone, so where my parentheses end for the log. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of multiplying. There was no adding and subtracting, so I'm just going to get rid of multiplying by the 4. So I'm going to get rid of multiplying by the 4 by dividing by 4. So now I have x over 4 equals log base 7 of y minus 2. Well, once the log is by itself, we're going to switch forms. So remember, we start with the base, then I'm going to hop to the other side and hop back. So I'm going to have 7 to the x over 4 equals y minus 2. Well, I want the y by itself, so now to undo subtracting 2, I'm going to add 2. So I'm going to have 7 to the x over 4 plus 2 equals y. Since I started with f of x, I'm going to rename it to f inverse of x. Okay. So let's try another one. So if I have y equals 5 log base 4 of 2y plus 8. Now on this one, I don't have the plus 8 in parentheses, which means that it's not inside the log. So the log is just this part right here. So I want to get rid of adding 8 and timesing by 5. So I'm going to subtract 8 first. Oh, except for we got to switch x and y. Don't forget that. So I have x equals 5 log base 4 of 2x plus 8. So I'm going to subtract 8 first. So I have x minus 8 equals 5 log base 4 of 2. This needs to be a y. Oh, let's see. I started the problem with a y. That originally should be an x, which when then we switch x and y, that turns into a y, not an x. And let's put it in green. Y. Okay, there we go. Problem solved. So now I have 2y. So I want to undo multiplying by 5. So I'm going to divide this whole thing by 5. So I have x minus 8 over 5 equals log base 4 of 2y. So I'm going to switch forms now that the log is by itself. Remember, to undo log, you switch to exponential. Log and exponential are inverses of each other. So I start with the base, I'm going to hop to the other side, and then I'm going to hop back. So I have 4 to the x minus 8 over 5 equals 2y. So now, to undo multiplying by 2, I'm going to divide by 2. On this side, if I put a divide by 2, this looks really complicated. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say multiply or dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by a half. So I'm going to write this as 1/2 times 4 to the x minus 8 over 5 equals y. And that will be our inverse. I started with y, so I can keep it as y for my log. Now, let's see what happens when you have a natural log. If I have y equals natural log 3x plus 4 minus 5. So I'm going to start out by switching x and y. So I have x equals the natural log of 3y plus 4 minus 5. I'm going to get the natural log by itself. On this one, the natural log is where my parentheses end. So that's what I want alone. So I'm going to undo subtracting 5. So I'm going to add 5. So I have x plus 5. Make sure that you keep the variable there. equals the natural log of 3y plus 4. So I'm going to undo the natural log by switching it to exponential. The base for natural log is e, so when I switch here, rather than taking the subscript that doesn't exist there, I'm going to switch it to an e. So I'm going to do e to the x plus 5, and then I'm going to hop to the other side, equals 3y plus 4. So I'm first going to subtract the 4 to get the y more by itself, so I have e to the x plus 5, subtract 4, equals 3y. Notice the subtract 4 is outside of the exponent, because it was done after we had switched to exponential. So now I'm going to undo multiplying by 3 by dividing by 3. So I'm going to divide this whole thing by 3. So I have e to the x plus 5 minus 4 over 3 equals y. This looks a little bit not so great. So the other way you could write this would be 1/3 e to the x plus 5 minus 4/3. That's a second way that you could write it, and then that equals y. Notice we started with y and ended with y. And that's how you find the inverses of logs.